Alright everybody, welcome on Facebook Live. We're going live in about 15 seconds. You're listening to Talk Recovery Radio. And mic's on. And one day this will all be over. Hello everyone and welcome to Talk Recovery Radio 100.5 CFRO. And yeah, we're at the Columbia and Hastings in the downtown east side. We come to you every Thursday with live radio shows talking about addiction and recovery issues and the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pathways to recovery, and sometimes we talk about addiction too because we'd like to talk about that. I'm in studio with my co-host, Mr. Darren Gaylor.
Heyo.
Hello, Darren. Francis Stone.
Woohoo.
Hello, Francis. Hello. So, big news. We like to start the show off with what's going on in hot news and addiction recovery. And our friend, is he our friend? Dr. Perry Kendall is retiring. So I don't, is it me, but I feel like that song in, you know, what is it? Wizard of Oz, Ding Dong, you know that? I really do. I mean, I'm reading the news, I'm reading everything, and, you know, Dr. Bonnie Henry has been appointed the new provincial health officer. So here's somebody that's been in power since, I think, 1999. He's been our provincial health officer. He's been to Portugal, he's been to Switzerland, he's talked to everybody that's created these amazing, innovative treatment options to help curb overdose crises in other countries. And yet when you hear Dr. Kendall speak at conferences, which I've actually sat through and listened, he always talks about those little snippets. And we've talked about that on Talk Recovery, where we talk about how Canada imports little snippets of harm reduction models that are in Europe, but never the whole thing. Like, we only do the one pillar, not the other three pillars, and how we only want to do decriminalization in British Columbia, but we don't want to talk about, you know, dissuading people to use drugs, which is what Portugal's principal base is, the Commission of Drug Dissuasion. So I kind of asked myself, like, that long, we're in an overdose crisis, 4,000 people are dead, and here everyone's like, oh, you know, happy retirement, you're like one of the best Canadian citizenships, and I'm not really feeling that way.
What do you really feel? Just happy?
That's how I really feel. That's how I really feel. There's, you know, out of those 4,000 dead people, a few dozen of them are my friends.
Ding dong, the witch is
Well,
dead.
a few of my friends are dead.
Yes, no.
They couldn't access treatment because they didn't qualify for welfare and they couldn't afford private treatment. They're dead.
Right.
That doesn't happen in Portugal. That doesn't happen in Switzerland. So I'm just like, I don't know, like, happy retirement. Go. You know, my friends are dead. They couldn't access treatment. Or if they wanted to access treatment, they had to go through that humiliating process of going to welfare and proving. You know, my friend Donnie had to prove he was poor every time he wanted to go to welfare.
Yeah.
Like, that's not right. I'm supposed to celebrate that after you've been given the knowledge of what works in other countries. So, anyway, that's my rant for the day, so I'm pretty happy he's gone.
I'm just happy. Do you know where the next lady stands on harm reduction? And
She's been
access
working
treatment?
alongside Dr. Perry Kendall for many years, so she's kind of like a protege. I don't know if it's many years, but she's been working alongside with him for a while. So she is part of the BC Centre on Substance Use, who is actively trying to encourage recovery and equal access. BC Centre on Substance Use is very familiar with the two-tiered system of healthcare in Canada, so they're diligently trying to have that not happen. There's more conversations coming out of the BC Centre of Substance Use in regards to why should people have to qualify for welfare to access treatment. So there's more talk happening through the BC Centre on Substance Use because of our conversations. I sit on one of the recovery stakeholder groups, so I bring it up every time I go pretty loudly. So I'm hoping that her connection to the BC Centre on Substance Use, you know, does make prescription heroin more available. I hope that there are more consumption sites. I hope that there are more opportunities for people to have equal access to harm reduction. I also hope that she also fights for people that also want to access treatment, can get it on demand, and not have to prove that they're on welfare to get it.
Right. Speaking of welfare, Judy Darcy, MLA Minister of Health and Addictions, is hosting a poverty reduction, what do they call that? Like sort of like a roundtable thing where people, give their ideas about how the province can reduce poverty, right? And so it's on Monday night. Check out her Facebook page, MLA Judy Darcy, and come out and talk about it, right? Because I think poverty is a huge factor in the reasons why people do struggle with addiction and all the rest of it. So yeah, I'll be there, and I look forward to seeing people that are also focused on that.
Well, that's our rant for today. Well, my rant anyway. That's how we start our show off with hot topics, what's going on in the news that affects us all in the addiction and recovery. That affects everybody in BC pretty much. And you can listen to us live every Thursday on 100.5 FM, Vancouver Co-op Radio. Talk Recovery Radio is powered by New West Recovery, which is Lastor Recovery Center and Westminster House, so shout out to them. And that's how we can get on air every Thursday. And don't forget, Co-op Radio is a membership-driven radio station, so there's no commercials. If you like our show, make a donation in the name of Talk Recovery, because every time you make a donation in our name, it makes us feel good and it pumps our egos. And if you want to be on our show, you can go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Talk Recovery Vancouver. You can tell us you love us, you can tell us you hate us, you can let us know you want to be a guest, and we'll accept all those conversations. And we usually start our show off then with our guest, and Frances Stone will be doing our first interview today. And who do we got in studio, Frances?
Okay, well, first of all, I don't know if we want to be using the Facebook page. Don't tell us you hate us, because we'll just say take your own inventory. But anyhow, today we are talking recovery with counselor, therapist, and life coach, Amanda Molyneux. Okay, yes, I said it perfectly. Okay, so we're going to talk about the law of attraction today, which, is a little bit of a hot topic. I think that a lot of people from our conversation earlier maybe don't entirely understand the law of attraction. So, Amanda, can you tell us a little bit about what it actually is?
Yeah, thanks for having me. The law of attraction simply is that our thoughts create. And how our thoughts create is simple. Our thoughts will create an emotion, which then will result in an action. A really good example of that would be a joke. If I tell you a joke right now, you'll think, oh, that was a funny joke, get a feeling of being excited, and then that'll result in the action of laughing. So that's exactly how our thoughts create, and that's exactly really what the law of attraction is in a nutshell, is that what we think will actually result in our actions from creating an emotion.
But what if I don't laugh?
Well, then again, right, if you didn't think the joke was funny, then you would have an emotion of me feeling just content, not happy, and then your actions will result in you not laughing. So all the law of attraction is just the principle that our thoughts actually create. It's also based in quantum physics as well, that quantum physics says that at all times there's a lot of things always going on that our subconscious mind can see. But our conscious mind can actually only capture a little bit of it. So what we actually choose to consciously focus on will actually end up seeing. And that's also a basic principle in neurolinguistic programming as well, is that what we choose to focus on. Now here's a really good example of that I'll use from my past. Now in my past, I've had, say, boyfriends that have cheated on me, and if I repeat that pattern enough, now I'm expecting it. I'm like, well, now I've got a new boyfriend, and let's say that he's perfect. He would never cheat on me. However, if he comes home late 10 minutes from work, I automatically oh, he must be cheating on me like the rest, because now I'm going to focus on that. If I see him late 5 minutes, I'm going to be like, oh, that's it, you're cheating on me. Or if he's texting and I've got that, that's what I'm choosing to focus on, oh, you're texting. Rather than if I say, oh, well, I trust him, I'll find all the evidence where I can actually trust him until something actually seriously happens and says maybe, oh, I'm cheating on you, right? So it's basically on the principle of what we consciously choose to focus on will gain evidence for. So I know with the law of attraction, a lot of people will say, okay, it's only working the law of attraction if I'm getting what I want. Well, the thing is, if we're actually driving our own bus and being at cause, what's going to happen is we'll see, even when things show up in our life that we don't want, at some point we had actually thought about them, whether it be specifically or even just in general, and then they're going to end up showing up. So is based in quantum physics. We're always doing it all the time with our thoughts, and what we consciously choose to focus on is actually going to show up, and we're going to live into that, right? So back to the example with, say, the boyfriend, if you've been cheated on and I'm bringing that past forward with me, I'm always going to be looking for evidence of why he's not there. So that thought is going to create an emotion of not trusting, and then I'm going to act out in that particular way and be suspicious and worry and that sort of thing.
But isn't there a part or a piece where maybe you look at your own boundaries, or you look at...
Oh, absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And see, now that's the other thing when it comes to emotions. So now our emotions are there to tell us that something needs to change. So really, technically, when I get angry, it's not that someone else made me angry. I've chosen to be angry in that situation. So let's just say he was actually cheating. Why not? He actually said I was cheating. Okay, now I'm angry. Okay, so of course our thought isn't going to change that, but I can take my thought and decide how I'm going to deal with the anger. I can either change my perception on the situation, or I can change my actions altogether. So a really good example of that would be, like, let's say I get home from work and I just leave my high heel shoes in the middle of the hallway, go do my thing, get some cookies and watch TV. Then all of a sudden, say my boyfriend comes home and he's in his construction gear and he's got mud on his boots and he walks right on my really nice high heel shoes. Now I'm angry. Now I could go and yell at him and say, you know, it's your fault. Or I could actually take my anger and say, what do I need to change about this situation? What boundaries do I need to put up? Or what actions can I change? I mean, instead of yelling at him, I could A, put my shoes away in the future. B, I could just leave them. That's an option, if those shoes, you know. Or I can choose to say it doesn't matter, they're just shoes. Those are three viable options that are there. So I can, yes, put up boundaries or change my perception on the situation.
But the other option is, as well, is that you could just lose your mind. You could just be angry.
Absolutely.
I think sometimes when I used to practice the law of attraction or something like it, because I didn't entirely understand what it was, but I think I watched The Secret on cable or something. And I remember when I was still struggling in addiction before I came into recovery, I kept trying to control all the things around me. And I was like, I think it was a form of denial for myself. Like, it was like, no, I just have to think positively. Like, okay, yeah, we don't have food, but just think positive. And I think, like, there was a piece where I was like totally denying that there was all these problems around me, and I was just focusing on thinking positive. So what do you say to that?
Exactly. Now, a lot of times that's going to happen when there's been things in our past that are undealt with. Undealt with traumas are just going to cloud what we're actually seeing, and we're not actually going to see all of the options available to us. And that's really what it's just about, is having all the options available to you. It's not, there's no right or wrong, good or bad answer to anything of what you choose to do. It's just having all those resources available. And that's actually what I do in my private practice, is I help people to get past those traumas so they're able to see other things. So for instance, let's say I was really traumatized by, men and not trusting them from my past, and I carry that forward. And sometimes people need a little bit of extra help and some other extra counseling to actually kind of get past that and see that there are other options. I mean, the other thing with thinking positive, and I remember saying this just the other day to somebody, they said, Amanda, it's not working, it's not working. Well, it's not just, if we just have one or two positive thoughts on a mountain of other negative thoughts, then that isn't quite enough. It has to be all in, and it's got to be something, it's got to be congruent. Every part of you has to actually want that, because it's the dominant thought that is the most dominant, that you truly do want, that is actually going to end up showing up.
Okay, but where does, I'm also an addiction counselor, and so a big part of what I do in my practice is allow people to grieve. Just allow them to feel, allow them to cry, allow them to just admit and just put down those barriers that say that I have to be strong all the time, and just cry their eyes out. And so if you're constantly, and this is where I get a little confused, is that I understand, thinking positive is a positive thing, but when it comes to grief and childhood trauma and that sort of stuff, I think, I wonder how law of attraction can be utilized in that? Like, what's positive about childhood trauma?
Oh, absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nothing is. Now, how does the law of attraction actually blend into that is a very good question. So, myself, I was, when I was younger, my dad was very abusive. And by the time I was 12 years old, he actually went to jail for what had happened with me and my siblings. And actually it made the newspaper, it was so bad. And then at that point, I actually started going down the slippery slope of addiction and partying and just rebelling, and I was very, very, very angry. And when I was 19, my dad actually ended up committing suicide. Now, because I thought I was defective in some way from the abuse, I thought it was my fault some way, that I wasn't good enough, maybe I wasn't skinny enough, maybe whatever the case was. When my dad committed suicide, I made it even worse, and I was like, oh my God, it's my fault. It's my fault for putting him in jail, for telling on him. He wouldn't have done this, right? And here's where I really learned the value of the law of attraction in a situation like that. I ended up going to see a counselor who was a neuro-linguistic programming practitioner. And what ended up happening is I really I wanted to know why he had done it. And once the trauma was removed, I was able to look at the situation and go, wow, he did it because he was guilty. And the funny thing was, out of the blue, we actually found a suicide note 3 years later. And by that time, I was completely addicted to heroin. I was on the street. I was not having a fun life. And I was about done with it. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, my friend was like, hey, somebody found this and some of this stuff from your dad. I thought you might want it. And I read it. And it said that he committed suicide because he felt guilty and that he couldn't stop hurting children, and he didn't think it was fair, so he thought he would take his own life. And at that moment, my perception changed from making it about me and thinking it was my fault. And that was the whole reason I was doing heroin, because I felt terrible and I wanted to cover those feelings. But as soon as my perception shifted and I was like, it's not my fault, I was able to get off of heroin and really change my life around, because my thought now changed and created the emotion of, wow, understanding and acceptance for what had happened, and wow, there's nothing wrong with me. Of course, what happened to me wasn't right. However, it wasn't my fault. And then I was able to start putting the pieces together. Of course, I do life coaching and counseling, so there is always a first couple sessions of actual counseling, because yes, it's very important to actually feel those emotions, because we don't know, until we have those emotions, we don't know where we want to take it. So, I just want to let you know, in my practice, I do counseling sessions first, and then life coaching is starting to do the sort of forward sort of motivation. But there is always the clearing up the past with the counseling, that is done first. But that shift in perception that made me change my life around is, again, my thoughts created an emotion, which then resulted in my action.
Yeah, wow, that's a really powerful story, Amanda. And honestly, I'm like super just grateful that your dad left you that note, and that you were able to like put the pieces of yourself together and get to a place where you're also helping other people do the same thing. That's pretty amazing, and that's what we like to do on this show.
Thank you.
But I just want to go back to like, how do you help your clients? Like, if a client comes in, like you say, like when you say like you remove the trauma, is that like is that part of just processing the trauma and talking to somebody about it? Because I mean, a huge part of what a counselor does is just listen. I mean, there's direction, of course, and stuff, but so many people just have never talked about whatever, and they just need to just talk about it. I mean, that's half the solution, is just talking about it, right? We always think like we have to go to the grave with everything. I mean, so many people say that when they first come into the rooms, and so like, how do you help your clients? Like you mentioned that you have some systems that you help. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I do neuro-linguistic programming as my main modality, also emotional freedom technique as well, which works really great. It's basically needleless acupuncture. With neuro-linguistic programming is the main one for any sort of childhood trauma, and it was done on me, so I know it works. It's basically disassociating from the actual trauma. So when I look back on the abuse that happened to me as a kid, it's in black and white, it's no longer in color, and it feels like it's happened to somebody else. So the emotional charge is now gone from it, and it's basically a meditation technique. The other thing, for instance, bullying and that sort of thing, it's really getting to the bottom of what we're making it mean, because I know in my childhood, I got bullied and picked on, and I made it mean that I wasn't good enough. So it's about switching the perception as well, and that's done through talking about it as well, because when we talk about it, we can explore it. And then when we move on to the life coaching part of it, once we've cleared up any sort of childhood trauma, we really take a look at where the client wants to be. So I've created a system that's really easy to get results in your life really quick. And what that is we actually take all of the complaints that we have in one area of our life. And we take those complaints and we start transferring them into intentions of what we'd want. Now, it's not bad to have a complaint. A complaint's really good because a complaint comes from a desire to want something. So that's great. However, a lot of times we'll just stop at the complaint. Now, with the law of attraction, what we think about, we're going to get. So if I've got a complaint that I can't trust men, then that's all I'm going to see, and that's all that's going to come back into my life. Now that comes from a desire to have a trusting, loving relationship with somebody. So we take it one step further and we say, okay, well, how can we state that in the positive? And there's a couple of reasons why I do it. First of all, the subconscious mind doesn't hear negatives. If I was to say right now, don't think of a blue duck, what would you, that blue duck, right? So what I do is I help clients to form their intentions in the positive and basically guide them on keeping every week, to keep them to that, to break the pattern of the negative, or the wanting thoughts.
I like that, because right now I'm thinking my daughter's 10 years old, and I don't know if anybody else has a 10-year-old daughter, but she's a handful. She's always been a handful, but anyhow. And as soon as you said like negative thought, I'm like, my daughter drives me nuts. Like, it's like, so I'm thinking, okay, how can I turn that? Because she's so loving, but she is so dramatic. And I have 2 boys, and they're just not like that. And yeah, anyhow. So I'm thinking, okay, how can I turn? That's the complaint. My daughter drives me nuts. How do I turn that into a positive?
Well, I mean, I would probably change the perception of the driving you nuts, right? So, is she excited? Is that the behavior, right? So, no, she just drives you nuts. Okay, so I would just plain up go with, I think, what's the desire? What do you actually want?
Okay.
So
I want my daughter to do more things for herself.
Oh, okay.
So what I'm actually thinking, because I think sometimes we get stuck in the complaint.
Yeah.
And my complaint, and I keep it in my head because obviously I don't want to say it to my daughter, like, you drive me nuts.
Right, so I intend for my daughter to start doing more things for herself.
Right.
So every time you have that complaint, just stop yourself, and like a pattern interrupt with like an elastic or something on the arm works really well as well. I say, Amanda, stop, and then say your intention. So I intend for her to start doing more stuff for herself.
And I noticed too that before we began our interview today that you did some tapping and stuff, right?
I did.
Is that part of law of attraction? Is it all sort of blend together, or what is that? Why did you do that?
It blends together. So why did I do that?
Yeah.
I did that because I was a little bit overly excited, a little bit nervous, and what that is called tapping, emotional freedom technique, and it really works good. It's amazing on any sort of unwanted emotion. It just stops it right in its path, and so I did that to get myself present and to kind of release some of the emotion. What it is it's actual meridian points in our body that we tap, and basically it's kind of like sticking a screwdriver into the circuit of the back of circuit of a cell phone, and it shorts it out. So it shorts out that emotion, that negative thought pattern. It can also be used to reinforce good emotions. The first time I used it, I was with my counselor and mentor that I had, and we were talking about my stepdad, and I got really, really upset, and all of a sudden he started tapping on me, and by the time he got to the 4th point, I was like, I'm totally fine. It's great. So it really, really does work, and it's something that I use as well in my practice, yes.
Cool. And I saw on your Facebook page as well that you call yourself a mind mechanic. Why do you call yourself a mind mechanic?
Because I give people the tools that they need to be able to create what they would like in their life. I'm also a hypnotherapist as well, and so I give people tune-ups, and I help them to create what they want in their life. And
I've never even heard that saying before, mind mechanic.
Yeah, it's because I say that, it's nobody's broken in need of fixing. However, they may just need a tune-up once in a while, and that's what I do as a mind mechanic,
I
I think most of our brains need to tune up from time to time.
Well, this is it, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you just, as you're talking, I'm like, you know, all of these concepts, like, you know, mindfulness, law of attraction, like, it's almost sad that they have to be given these, like, schoolings over here, you know, like, they're not just like a natural approach, because they're so humanistic, you know, as far as, you know, grasping concepts, changing perspectives. It's like all these things I believe, like I went and I like in my attempts of trying to, you know, get better, I did neurofeedback, I did the tapping and all of these things, and it's a little discouraging for me, because at the time I'm trying to cure a heroin addiction by use of these things, you know what I mean? Like they're so necessary, like, you know, after that. Because we sometimes think, like, what's the cure? I'll do anything. And it's like, well, I mean, there's a lot of work involved in the stopping a very serious habit, such as addiction, right? And then if we stop that, you know, for however we do it, it's like we don't go any further, because I've stopped that big thing in my life that was creating so many problems. And so, like, I think many of us that have made these huge changes, like addiction, we sort of stop there, right? And then years, if we stay clean a few years, then we realize how necessary all of these, you know, just what you're describing, how important they are.
And a really good example of that is with smoking. Now, I used to smoke, and when I quit a few times, every nanosecond of the day, all I could think about was smoking, and it took up my brain. It was a constant fight. Once I actually went through all the stories of why I think I need to smoke, you know, and actually got through all those stories that were running in my subconscious, and went, okay, so it makes me feel good. It, you know, it fills the void. No, it created the void. I won't be cool unless I do it. No, I stink. I'm going to miss out on something. No, I'm not. I'm actually going to miss out if I leave for that cigarette from the party. And once go through all those stories, you know, and same thing with addiction. You know, it's okay, I'm just going to take another day away. But see, if we're still thinking and focusing on it, then, you know, it's still going to be something in our minds, right? And I think where, you know, once people have made the great hurdle of losing, like, you know, getting off of drugs and getting clean, now it's time to start looking forward at what they want to do and focusing on that and starting to work towards that, and really keeping our mind off of really where we've been. You know, there's not a day that I think of heroin anymore. Right. However, I mean, for a good 5 years after, it was a daily struggle. The struggle was real. And what I realized was I needed to start looking forward. What do I want now? When I look back, I mean, I walked up to the studio and I looked around, and, you know, years ago that was me. And, you know, I'm so far away from it now, and it feels like I'm farther away from it than probably because I started to look forward, and it wasn't until I started to look forward that I felt farther away from it. When I was still every day just struggling to stay clean, I still didn't feel, even if it was 5 years, I didn't feel like that far away from it.
Right.
Because I was always like, oh, what am I missing out there, right? And now, so I chose to start this company and to help people, because I was like, wow, I could take that experience, I can still hold on to it, but I can take it and look forward with it.
Right.
And, you know, I think that's the important thing, is finding something.
Yeah, because most people that are stuck, let's just call it that are stuck are having those emotional processes from the past, or from the, you know, that were created in some event in the past, and it's that guidance that we all need to sort of get past that's not, you know, the true emotional response that should be happening in this present situation, but we're just keep carrying it and keep carrying it and keep carrying it.
You nailed it. You've nailed it. You know, funny story, I was having dinner with somebody, and I offered them the rest of the salad, and they gave me a look like, what, what is this supposed to mean? And I'm like, it doesn't mean anything. I was just being courteous. I actually didn't want you to take any of it. I wanted to eat it myself, right? So, you know, he was bringing forward a previous situation that he's had with somebody else, and at that moment, you know, and making it mean something totally different. So you're right, bringing those traumas forward And that's what I help to alleviate before we look at the life coaching part of it, right?
So you mentioned, I mean, your story sort of with your dad's, pretty amazing story. And you said how much sort of was concluded with finding the note. Now, there's so many people in life never get to, find the note. They don't get that sort of, that proof or that that thing that clears up all of that confusion and misunderstanding and unknowing. Like that's, I think, part of the being stuckness, is a lot of this process a part of, sometimes if you can't find the proof, like create it, like create what you want to believe in. If you can never be told the real reason, pick one that makes you feel better than how you currently are.
Well, that's one way to do it, and I realize that not a lot of people are going to have that same luck that I had.
Right.
However, what that enabled me to see was that I was making it about me. So if I'm working with someone that's not going to get that solid proof, like coming down from the sky, then I mean the question is what are they making what's happened to them mean about them? And a lot of times they're just making it about themselves. I'm not good enough. Eating disorders will come from being bullied. People call you fat. That's it. No, I'm not going to eat because I'm not going to fit in unless I'm skinny. So again, they're making that mean about them. For instance, so many things, right? Like being bullied, then we're going to have lack of self-confidence. We're not going to feel good about ourselves. Well, if we think about the law of attraction and I think I'm no good, what's going to happen when I go out to, I'm not even going to ask that guy out because I'm not going to think I'm good enough because of something from my past. So, it's about changing the perception on why the situation happened to them and that, it's not their fault, right? A big key to mine as well, before I found the note, was realizing that there is a cycle of abuse as well, especially with sexual abuse that, and it was something that actually had happened to my dad, and then that's the only way my dad knew, right? So, and just knowing that was part of the puzzle as well. But even just knowing that still wasn't enough for me to say, oh, well, and it wasn't until I got older and when we put the pieces together. So, with somebody that doesn't have like absolute proof, I'm sure they create a story that works for you. That's good if it works. I mean, but I would look at, what they're making it mean about themselves and work on those particular issues, right? And bring them to a point, because most people, they just want to understand and accept to be comfortable in their own skin, right? So if we understand why somebody's done something, then it's so much easier to not make it mean anything about ourselves. Right? Like, for instance, I mean, let's say, a guy dumps me, I can make it mean that I'm no good. I mean, or I can just say, look, it's empty and meaningless, and he just wants something different. And okay, then it's not for me, and still feel 100% good about myself, right?
It's amazing because, we all need, you sit with a stranger and sometimes they're the ones that offer that perspective that, we could never grasp ourselves. So what is, I know you talked a little bit about life coach, what's all of your training?
Yeah, so I'm a hypnotherapist. I'm a neurolinguistic programming practitioner. I'm a time techniques practitioner, and I'm a certified success coach, life coach. Now, I do more neurolinguistic programming, law of attraction coaching. So the two modalities, hypnotherapy, actually time techniques, neurolinguistic programming, and emotional freedom techniques. Basically, psychotherapy is what I'll use in the counseling part of it to sort of talk about and to, discover and really get to the nitty-gritty of why somebody's lack of confidence, not feeling comfortable in their own skin. Once we get to that point and we've got to a functioning level, then we look forward on to the life coaching part of it and start to actually create things in our lives. So
sounds like all of these really work very cohesively together.
They do, and they're all based in quantum physics, my favorite thing in the whole wide world. I love it.
So, I mean, we could talk another 3 hours on all these different aspects. So, how do you get people involved into finding more information on this? Do you have a website, Facebook page?
I do. I have a website. It's www.cyf, so create your future, NLP, neurolinguisticprogramming.com. I also have a YouTube channel where I do talk about the power of intentions and the law of attraction. and give a lot of information about how the subconscious mind works. And if you go to YouTube in the search bar, it's Create Your Future with Amanda.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, that's amazing, and congratulations to all that you're doing. If you want to get in touch, Amanda Molyneux is her name, and yeah, check out our Facebook page at Talk Recovery and check out more information on there. And well, all of you guys are here in the studio with us right now watching, so check that out. We'll be back with the personal story with Isadore, and for now, let's go to our first song, Like I Fight For You by Current Swell.
Thank you. I created the microphones.
Hey, thank you.
Did it work?